This week on Choice Hacking. In 2009, graphic designer Mike Cesario, a big fan of metal, rock, and punk, went to the Vans Warped Tour. If you're unfamiliar with the Vans Warped Tour, it was a 46-stop punk rock festival that featured bands like Blink-182, The Offspring, and Sum 41. The last year of the Warped Tour was 2019, but when it did run, it was at the height of summer in temperatures that would make standing still difficult, let alone performing in a punk band or watching them in the crowd. The atmosphere at Warped was a little rebellious, edgy, and high energy. Most of the performers were chugging Monster energy drinks just to keep up. But then Mike, who was standing in the audience, spied a little subtle stagecraft. Turns out that the musicians weren't actually chugging Monster energy drinks at all. Mike noticed that some people were dumping out their Monster and pouring water into the empty cans. The musicians still looked like they were chugging Monster energy drinks, but actually they were just drinking water. And then it struck Mike. Why had no one marketed water like Monster Energy? Brands in the water category existed, but they were mostly natural, taste-based brands or health-based electrolyte brands like Smart Water. As Mike looked around him, he could see opportunity everywhere. Festival goers who were forced to choose between cheap beer or energy drinks to stay hydrated in the summer heat. There could be a third option that, if it was branded right, wouldn't make people stick out like a sore thumb at a concert or on stage. He could create a canned water with a design that looked more like Metallica and Monster Energy than Taylor Swift and Smart Water. I'm Jennifer CLINEHENS, and you're listening to Choice Hacking, a podcast about what makes buyers tick, from psychology to behavioral science, neuromarketing, and more. Join me today as we unpack the psychology behind the biggest story in consumer packaged goods at the moment, Liquid Death, a canned water brand that used psychology and behavioral science, knowingly or not, to stand out from the water bottle crowd, but fit in with the metal, rock, and punk subcultures to become one of the fastest-growing consumer goods brands in history. But first, I want to take a minute to talk about choice hacking and who we are. Did you know that Choice Hacking is not just a podcast? We help marketers and entrepreneurs figure out what makes their buyers tick with our pro membership, team trainings, coaching, and consulting for brands from startups all the way up to the Fortune 10. Our Pro membership is by far our most popular product. It gives you access to more than $2,000 worth of courses. That's every single course and workshop that I currently offer, as well as access to $10,000 worth of live, in-person events and support from me every single year. To learn more about the Pro membership and our other trainings, workshops, and consulting offerings, just visit choicehacking.com to learn more. That's choicehacking.com. Now on to the show. When people first see Liquid Death, they're usually pretty curious. It doesn't look like any other brand of water that they're used to seeing. At a glance, it could easily pass for a can of beer. And for a lot of Liquid Death's early fans, that's exactly what they wanted. The brand held a certain appeal for a group known as straight edge, a sub-niche of punk culture who, in response to punk's reputation for excess drinking and drug use, refrained from smoking, drinking, drug use, and in some cases, caffeine, casual sex, animal products, and even prescription drugs. When these folks were at shows before Liquid Death existed, there really wasn't an option for them that didn't make them stand out like a sore thumb. A bottle of water doesn't really fit in with a sea of Miller Lights and Tallboy cans. And obviously, Liquid Death is a product that anyone can drink if they just prefer water for whatever reason, not just people who are straight edge. Founder Mike Cesario put it this way. At concerts, quote, "It's a lot of cheap, gross beer and energy drinks that most people don't want to drink. We wanted to give people permission to participate in this cool rock and roll brand without needing to consume something gross." The rise of Liquid Death also coincided with the sober curious movement in the US, which is when people, mostly younger millennials and Gen Z, took some time to evaluate when, why, and how much they were drinking alcohol. The sober curious weren't committing to never drinking again, but they often took breaks from drinking to be more mindful about how much they consumed. Liquid Death helped put something in their hand that didn't raise the kinds of questions or challenges from their peers that a bottle of water might. The origin story of Liquid Death hints at three things that they are very, very good at: being distinctive, marketing to an identity, and making people feel like they're part of a community. Let's start with their distinctiveness. As we established earlier, Liquid Death wasn't really a brand new idea. What it was a remixing of a brand approach and a category. In this case, Monster Energy and bottled water. But because nearly every bottled water brand was using design elements that had mental associations like nature and pure, and basically blue, green, or white as their brand colors, it was incredibly easy to bring something new to the category. Even the name, Liquid Death, tells you this is going to be a very different brand than Smart Water, Evian, or Poland Spring. Their brand and product design make them distinct and therefore easier to remember, and that means their marketing has a much easier job than, let's say, Smart Water. If we get meta for a minute, the purpose of marketing is to build memories and mental associations, so when people need your thing, they remember you and they buy it from you. Brands are really more memory than design, and when you have a distinctive brand that stands out as much as Liquid Death does in its category, your marketing becomes much more efficient. You just don't have to work as hard as the legacy brands do. It's down to something called the von Restorff effect, which says just that. Things that are different get noticed and remembered. Okay, so Liquid Death is different. That's not rocket science, but how they market these differences to their community and the broader marketplace just might be. Liquid Death is firmly entrenched in multiple, you could call them fringe, subcultures outside of punk and metal. You'll see their products pop up next to comedians, podcasters, skaters, and even drag queens. Liquid Death does something that's not immediately obvious, that authentically aligns them with subcultures like these. It tasers its haters. Here's what I mean. Their marketing is, in some ways, defined by their defiance against people who think their product is overhyped or just not good. Just like a lot of the subcultures that have embraced Liquid Death, the brand sees itself as outside the mainstream and therefore liable to scrutiny. And like some of these cultures, skateboarding is not a crime comes to mind, Liquid Death claps back. In one ad, they found two real internet haters who claimed in their words that, quote, Liquid Death is the worst water. They flew these folks out to LA for a blind water taste test. If they picked Liquid Death as the worst water, they got $1,000. But if they picked another brand, they got tasered. I don't know whether as a marketer I want to high-five the legal team on this, or maybe I should be concerned somehow. There are a bunch of examples of things like this, though. Liquid Death turning customer complaints into content. And that's one way to really solidify the identity of a brand, by creating an enemy and confronting them. It's aggressive, it's confrontational, it's punk. That's what makes Liquid Death so embraced by subcultures like these. They share the same values. But they don't just say that they share them, they show that they share them and help that subculture double down on those values by doing things like tasering haters. And that's the difference between a brand fitting into a subculture and making it more of what it already is, and a brand that just slaps a viral TikTok sound on a video to try to be cool. While Liquid Death are killing it in terms of growth and brand recognition, they still have a long way to go to take down the big players in bottled water, owned by mega brands with deep pockets like Nestle and Coca-Cola. It's likely we'll see more and more imitators in the category, putting their water in cans and slapping a skull on the front. And that's part of the problem of doing what Liquid Death did, taking a commodity product and slapping a funky brand on it. That'll give them a head start and some authenticity, but it doesn't make them invincible. With no real product difference that can be maintained for the long term, they'll need to pull out some tricks and savvy strategic moves to stay ahead, or just survive long enough to get acquired. But so far, Liquid Death have proven themselves more than capable of bringing ideas to market that blow entire categories off the laurels that they're so firmly sat upon. Time will tell if they can succeed once the novelty of their unique brand and marketing wears off. Thank you for listening to the Choice Hacking Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it. It takes me 20+ hours to create every episode, and it helps the podcast find new listeners when it has more ratings and reviews. And if you want to get free weekly insights into growing your business by mastering what makes buyers tick without being slimy, unethical, or tricking people into paying you, you can join the 8,000 entrepreneurs and marketers from brands like Google, Coca-Cola, and Disney that get my newsletter. To sign up, just visit choicehackingIdeas.com. That's choicehackingIdeas.com. Until next time.
That money clip, I snap and move, now I hit record and drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets.